The 20th century was the American century, from ending two world wars to defeating communism in Europe and around the world, establishing a rules-based international order and leading technological revolutions that extended human potential like never before. The US has enjoyed unrivaled global leadership since the end of World War II. It's no wonder why the US came to believe that its system is superior and that its values are universal. On the surface, the pivot seemed like a response to China's assertiveness in stating territorial claims in the South China Sea, but it was also a response to the realization that China was becoming a major player on the world stage and needed to be monitored closely. The US also noticed that China was beginning to surpass it in terms of science, technology, and innovation. Just look at how quickly Chinese companies have dominated the solar panel, electric vehicle, and 5G markets. One argument is that the US has become increasingly divided and polarized in recent years. This has led to a decline in its soft power and has made it more difficult to project strength abroad. The biggest issue is that China's economy, while large, is not as advanced or productive as the US economy. According to the World Bank, China's GDP per capita is just over $22,000, while the US is nearly twice that at over $45,000. Additionally, China's population is aging rapidly, which could lead to a shortage of workers in the coming decades. Furthermore, China's military is still not as advanced or capable as the US military. Despite its size and budget, China's military technology and tactics are still not on par with the US. Additionally, China's lack of access to key resources and its dependence on imports for many critical materials could limit its ability to sustain a long-term conflict. Additionally, the US faces competition from other major powers, particularly China, which has emerged as a major economic and military power in recent decades. The US has traditionally been the world's dominant superpower, but China's rise as a major economic and military power has challenged that dominance. The US faces internal divisions and external competition from China, while China faces challenges related to its population and resource constraints. Ultimately, it is unlikely that either country will be able to maintain its current level of power and influence in the long term. Instead, the world is likely to see a multipolar system emerge with multiple centers of power. This could lead to increased competition and tensions between the two countries, but it could also create opportunities for other nations to play a larger role on the world stage. Only time will tell how this competition will ultimately play out. China's rapid growth has challenged the US's dominance in many areas, including trade, investment, and technology. Moreover, China's Belt and Road Initiative has given it a significant presence in many parts of the world, particularly in Asia and Africa. Finally, the US faces other challenges such as climate change and pandemics, which require international cooperation to address. However, the US has been slow to take action on these issues and has often been seen as an obstacle to progress. That sense of exceptionalism has been shaken in recent years by the rise of China, which many Americans see as a threat to their way of life. Since implementing sweeping economic reforms in 1990, China has grown from a poor agrarian economy into the world's second largest economy. China's development has been nothing short of spectacular. It boasts the world's largest high-speed rail network. It has successfully launched over 500 satellites into space, and it's made incredible strides in fields like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and biotechnology. According to a recent report by the Center for Economics and Business Research, China is expected to have the largest economy in the world by 2030, overtaking the United States. What's more, China has an even greater advantage when it comes to population. With 1.4 billion people, China has the world's largest population. This gives it a massive pool of workers to draw from and could give it a significant advantage in any future conflict. Furthermore, China has been investing heavily in its military in recent years, increasing its defense spending by double digits for several years running. This has led to the modernization of its military and the development of new capabilities. Today, China has the world's second largest military budget and the largest navy in the world. By comparison, the US has only 20 tech companies in the top 100, and China now leads the US in the number of scientific publications and patents filed each year. Many experts believe that this trend will only continue in the coming decades, which is why some fear that China will eventually overtake the US to become the world's leading superpower. Is it possible that the 21st century will be the Chinese century? Which nation will win the next superpower race, and what does that mean for our future? The term superpower refers to a state that can project its power across the globe and shape international relations in its favor. The US has the largest economy in the world by nominal GDP and ranks second in terms of purchasing power parity. Its highly developed economy is driven by innovation and entrepreneurship, and the country is home to some of the most valuable companies in the world. The US also has a highly skilled workforce with a high level of education and productivity. Furthermore, the US has a strong network of alliances and partnerships around the world, which gives it a significant advantage in terms of soft power. The US government and private sector have worked hard to promote democracy and human rights abroad, and the country's culture and values are seen as attractive to many people around the world. Finally, the US has the most powerful military in the world and spends more on defense than the next 10 nations combined. This gives it the ability to project power around the world and defend its interests. Typically, superpowers are defined by their economic, military, and technological strength. The US has long been considered the world's sole superpower, a status it achieved following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. However, China's emergence as a major player on the world stage has led many to question whether the US will maintain its position as the world's sole superpower in the 21st century. As always, I want to thank you all so much for your support. So let's begin with a quick history lesson to set the stage for today's rivalry. For most of modern history, America and China were largely isolated from one another. In fact, it wasn't until 1972 that Richard Nixon became the first American president to visit China. Even after that, though, each nation had its own sphere of influence and didn't compete for power in the same regions. The US focused on the Middle East and Western Europe, while China grew closer to its allies in Asia. Things began to change during the presidency of George W. Bush. The invasion of Iraq in 2003 and subsequent war on terror brought the US into direct conflict with forces based in the Middle East. Unfortunately, the US did not find any weapons of mass destruction, and public opinion began to turn against the war. China, on the other hand, saw an opportunity to fill the void in the region left by the conflict and began to expand its own sphere of influence in the Middle East. This trend would only accelerate with the 2008 financial crisis, when China became the second largest economy in the world and the largest trading partner of dozens of nations for other Middle East, Africa, and Latin America. While American prestige was waning abroad, China's growing economy was offering alternatives to developing nations and presenting itself as a viable partner to even the United States' closest allies. The situation became increasingly tense in 2010 when the US and China initiated a so-called pivot towards Asia, a strategic shift meant to counter China's growing military presence in the region. Today, China has become the world's leading manufacturing hub and is home to more than 40 of the world's top 100 tech companies. But what does it mean for a country to be a superpower? One argument in favor of the US maintaining its position as the world's sole superpower is the strength of its economy. However, there are also arguments against the US maintaining its position as the world's sole superpower. On the other side of the equation, we have China, which is often cited as the nation best poised to challenge the United States' global supremacy. Despite these impressive statistics, though, many experts argue that China still falls short of being a true superpower. In conclusion, both the US and China have strengths and weaknesses that make it difficult to predict who will come out on top in the 21st century.